saying the philosopher's supposed to use logic, not their feelings, to come to conclusions. I do that. It's just that one of the things I look at logically are the feelings that are part of the human experience, because they are part of the human experience. And when we're going to look and explain the human experience, we have to take them into account. Now, when I'm not explaining the human experience, you don't see feelings in my epistemology or anything like that. It's just in terms of information.
Yeah, well, whatever. I'll just, yeah, I'll acquiesce to the point because I don't understand it again. Yeah, fine. Understanding your psychology. Yes, that's what the philosophy does. That's what it should do. It should have a full understanding of the psychological pitfalls, that we see things that don't really exist. That should be part of our philosophical understanding. We feel things that are just a manifestation of our conditioning. You know, this is what philosophy is supposed to do, but you're not doing that. You're saying there's logic intrinsic in the feelings. There's logic in understanding why we feel, but there's no logic in the feelings.
Big thing then about the spirituality. Okay, so I'm just arguing that spirituality is some sort of urge that shows us our connection with everything, all the other animals, and the plants, and the rocks, and the stars, and space, and all of that. If you can see that intellectually, then you can overcome that need. I'm just saying it's a bioevolutionary function. And if you could see that connection, so for example, just with your intellect, you could see that we should be kind to animals and just ecological in
Yeah,
general.
but we don't need to
That would
feel it. It's the point. We don't need to feel any empathy. We need
Well,
to
that's what
we
I'm
need
saying.
to understand it as a principle, not to do it out of compassion or empathy. Those shouldn't be the motivating impetuses. The motivation should merely be the principle. Once we've defined it as the objective, as the required thing that must be done, that's all we have to do is declare it as a necessity. We don't have to agree with it. We don't have to psychologically be comfortable with the rules our philosophy writes. And that's why the two can't be mixed, is because if we allow the psychology to influence, and the psychology is going to allow us to make value judgments that have nothing to do with logic and have everything to do with our individual definitions of things like beauty, which are completely irrelevant. I mean, I can condition you to think anything is beautiful. I mean, I can do it. I mean, if I'm given the tools, I can make a kid into anything. I can make him love square boxes. I mean, I can make him into anything.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We're agreeing then for a rare case where, if you could intellectually see that, it's just like if you're intellectually smart enough to stay off your broken foot, then you can kill the pain and still it's not going to be bad for yourself. But so the theory is, though, that spirituality's here because, the DNA doesn't wait for intellect. Not everybody can intellectually see why they should care about another person's situation. They just don't see enough. And, so you have things like spirituality to help people see that when they're intellectually not able to yet. And so, yeah, you
It's
could
a
have
shortcut. It's a shortcut that I say is way too fucking dangerous. Because once you do that mixing, then you're just going to open the door to all the bigoted bullshit, all the preference, prejudice, I want, I desire. That's how you glorify life, is to allow psychology, the addictive nature of the beast, to start influencing the equations. And that's when it becomes all about sentiment instead of about practical reality. And that's why you end up spending money to keep dead people alive. It's because there's no rationality to policy anymore or principle. I mean, that's when you start worrying about fertilized eggs more than you start worrying about 2 billion people living in shit. So anyway, it's basically just gray text philosophy. Somehow we have to feel the right philosophy. And it's not our nature anyway. Our nature is not generous. We are psychologically not naturally generous. Okay? We're naturally selfish. We're naturally manipulative. self-focused, self-obsessed. That's our nature. That's the tendency of the psychology. And the pretense of spirituality, I think, in most cases, just turns into an excuse for a bunch of ego crap, a bunch of ego feeding. People are getting off on their spirituality. I mean, it's like the word creativity. I mean, people use it now like like they cured cancer. I had a spiritual thought, therefore I cured cancer. I mean, it's just like they're superior now because I'm enlightened because I cared about another human being. I mean, it's just more ego crap. They're feeding their ego. They're not abiding to a principled philosophy.
Another thing, you say that we're naturally selfish. What I think is that the genes produces a bunch of these, types of human tendencies. You can also condition yourself to some, but there is some human nature there. But there's all different types. There are giving types as well, and the genes create these in various proportions, and the proportions are relative to the environment. The genes have lived millions of years. We have to be able to survive ice ages. So in an ice age, probably a different kind of personality type has to dominate than in a time of plenty. And that's what you're going to see, the change of generosity is obviously more associated with money, if we ever have any. It's a problem with artificial scarcity.
Well, I know, but I'm saying that's where this is a trap, though, because that's not the real tendency. The real tendency is to only care about people that fit your description of a family or connectiveness. And so the less connected somebody is, the less human they become. And that's when you get into the nationalism and the nepotism and all this other crap that is completely corrosive to social policy.
Gary, see, the psychological theory here is that, okay, human beings, we have these various types and some that grow based on the environment. Well, when you're in a crisis environment, what's generated is exactly what you're complaining about. You're in a crisis environment, and it promotes the rise of the assholes to the top. And the problem is that we've been in, so you come out of something like an ice age, that's an honest-to-goodness crisis environment. For all we know, you need that in that time. But the problem is we've come into a time of plenty on the earth, and because of slavery, we have this simulated crisis. Humanity is in this crisis of imposed poverty, not because there's an ice age, but because of basically the slave system and the work slaves, the wage slave system we have now, the still oppressive system that creates a sense of crisis and generates this worst side of human types.
Well, and I don't think spirituality is going to save the day. What's going to save the day is having the common denominator of truth. And because that's the thing that can tie us all together is acceptance of basic truths. And that's not going to happen as long as people are feeding their psychology. They've got to feed their philosophy, not their psychology. The philosophy's got to own the psychology, not the other way around. That's my argument. And my argument is as soon as you allow psychology to start defining the priorities of philosophy, the game is over.
The point of spirituality is, see, I don't think you have to go. Basically, I just want to describe it as part of
But joke's over, don't you
reality.
see that
But don't you
capitalism
just
is a
have a
system
spiritual...
that was put together based upon the premise that people are inherently selfish?
Jacob, you're
So-
talking over Pyro, so you obviously aren't hearing him because he's not Doc or something, but you're talking over him, so wait your turn.
I was just going to say you have spirit... Sorry about that, and you can go next. But I'm just saying, what are you going to do? Don't deny if you're walking along and you have one of these insights and you feel connected, and maybe those are the moments you see a solution of something you can do to make the world a better place. If you have this spiritual experience for yourself, just recognize it as such. Just like if you have a lustful feeling or any other idea, you recognize it as such. So, I mean, I'm